Let me start off just by introducing you to the person who performed the autopsy. This is Dr. Roger Mitchell. He's a board certified pathologist. He's chief medical officer at Howard University currently. Also is the former chief medical examiner in Washington, D.C. Now, his main statement right off the top was the pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factor contributed to or were the cause of the death of Nolan Wells. So he couldn't come to a determination on the cause of death, and he couldn't come to a determination as to how Nolan Wells died. Now, this is an important part. Ben Crump, who ran the press conference, really wanted everyone to understand. He felt this was a significant development. I'm not 100% sure. It's called, the medical examiner found red discoloration when he cut into the back of the head. But he found no lacerations of the skin or fractures of the skull. Again, Ben Crump highlighted this, said this was important, something significant, and it could very well be. I do want to tell you from my experience, different cases we've covered, that redness in the back of the head could simply be caused by the body or the head laying on a slab, or when it's traveling, when it's sitting in the morgue, during the time it's being examined. It could very well be from that, especially when it's not accompanied with any lacerations or any fractures to the skull. But again, the doctor could not make a final determination and said there needs to be further investigation of it. He did cut into the skin, and again, didn't see any of that bruising on the skin or on the scalp or any lacerations. So it's something to keep an eye on, something to highlight, but again, not dispositive of any particular blunt force trauma or any kind of foul play here. The other interesting thing that Ben Crump wanted to highlight, and I think it's important to note, is that the inner neck structures were absent. And by that, this area here, it was pointed out, the trachea, the hyoid bone, that throat structure was not included with the body. The doctor made a point of saying that this is, again, normal procedure, especially in instances where there may be some concern that there's an injury to the throat. So it's significant in this sense. The doctor could not evaluate it because he did not have it. But if the original medical examiner decided to keep it, there's a chance they might be concerned that there was some injury to the throat area. So that's important. Maybe they're continuing their investigation of that particular area of Nolan Wells' body because they're concerned that there might have been some form of injury to the throat area. So even though he couldn't make an evaluation, someone is right now, and we'll see how that turns out when the first autopsy is ultimately released by the state. So again, because he did not have that neck structure, that throat structure, he could not rule out that death was caused by some injury to the throat area. Well, you raise an excellent point. What if she is a victim? What if he was keeping her there? And you know, I'm judge domestic violence. We've learned so much. You know, this idea that, oh, why didn't she just leave? No, we understand that there are psychological aspects to this. She has children there with him. I'm not even going to question why she didn't leave. But if we figure out that this was a situation where she was suffering from domestic violence, was in a situation that she could not get out of, do you still support charges against her and her culpability in what's happening in that home?
I think it's twofold. Yes, she needs to have charges against her because there needs to be accountability, even if she's a victim. We both know in domestic violence and other instances where people and children are victims, because she started at 13, so arguably she's been a victim for a very long time as a child. A lot of people say to me, I was a victim of pretty horrific things. And guess what? I don't perpetrate on others. I don't treat my children like that. So even if you're a victim, you need to be held accountable. Where I see it making a huge difference is her defense and whether or not maybe she would need to be in an inpatient facility versus a jail if convicted. Number two, if she's convicted, her sentence. because as a victim, she would need a whole lot of different stuff than someone who was not a victim. But I still think she needs charges and accountability. In this particular case, if, assume for a moment, she's been a victim since she was a young girl, and at 13 she gets pregnant, her parents forced her to marry this older man, he's controlling, domestic violence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, maybe wouldn't let her out of the house, maybe wouldn't even let her go down to her children, arguably, right? We don't know. But if that were the set of facts, do you believe she should still face charges?
No, I honestly don't. And
Wow.
again, it depends. I need to know the
Okay.
level of the abuse. I need
Mm-hmm.
to know some of the things that she's done. I need more information. But if there's enough, I completely support the idea that they use her to testify against the real monster, which
Hmm.
is whomever was putting her in that position.
I wanted to quickly report on a historic settlement deal with Anthropic and authors and publishers involved in a class action suit. It was for $1.5 billion. The lawsuit involved Anthropic using copyrighted work and getting it from pirated websites and places that had this work illegally. They were getting some of it from legal means, but they're getting a lot from these illicit or illegal websites. So there were a couple of things the lawsuit had to decide. Is it okay for them to get this stuff from pirated websites? And if in fact they got it from pirated websites or the normal legal means, is it considered a fair use? What the judge found in the case was that it is in fact fair use, that when these large language models take all of this information, books and books and books, millions of books, uses it to then inform and create what it can do, that is fair use. It's transformative enough that it's not considered a violation of copyright. So when you go in and you do a query and it gives you an answer, it's not a violation of copyright. So what this ultimately ended up being was a settlement. But now that ruling by the judge does not have binding precedent power, because when you have a settlement, it's agreement between two parties. So any rulings in the case are not official. It's not something that other cases can look at and say, okay, that's the law. This is the way we're going to decide. No, but what it is, it's influential. Here's the problem. All of this has an effect on you. One's good, one's not so good. One effect is because these licensing deals are becoming the norm. We just saw one, and I talked to you about it last week in the music industry. Well, now if it becomes the norm in the publishing industry, that money that goes to the publisher, and it's great, it's going to the artist, but that cost is going to trickle down to you, the consumer. So the prices are going to go up to use your favorite large language model, your ChatGPTs, your Claudes. Also, what it's going to do is it's going to force the smaller players out of the market because it costs a tremendous amount of money to license that kind of information, tremendous millions and millions of books. So smaller companies are not going to be able to compete. They're going to drop out of the market. Less competition, again, means higher prices. So you will be paying more. The good thing is, because it's coming from legit copyrighted works, there's going to be less hallucinations, what they call hallucinations, where it's inaccurate material because they're not getting it from illicit sources, where the information is not policed. It could be accurate, it could not be accurate. So your responses to your queries will be more reliable. So there's an upside and a downside, but that's the effect on the consumer.
There was no rationale for the way the case was laid out. It never made sense. I never saw the evidence that compiled these actions into a murder one for 35 years. I did not see the evidence for that. And the fact that the defense attorney had his mother take the stand and that's all, no mitigation, they weren't ready. I said I do work for the defense, like a lot, and some
Mm-hmm.
heinous cases that I can never talk about. I'm under an NDA, but I'm like, is that all that he had?
Yeah, no, it was shocking, and we all knew. Any of us who were in the profession knew there was something up here. Either the guy was throwing the case, or the
Yes.
guy. I had thought the case was he lived in that area. He was
Yes.
doing his job, but he wasn't going to be too vigorous because he had to go back to that community, and he
Uh-huh.
wanted people to continue to come to his firm.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so I think he was just doing the minimum. In this
Yes.
way, let the thing play out as it may. But again, it turns out that wasn't the case.
This is a hard case
Hmm.
because and I say it's a hard case because we had to cover it, but it is hard for us to the individuals who could be Carmelo Anthony's parents, right? And then this affinity, and you and I kind of talked about this earlier, that he allegedly had, that's in the papers, for guns and knives.
Well, let me give some context before you
Yeah.
continue on, so folks know where you're going. The next sort of area I wanted to talk about was exactly that. Apparently, according to the motion for new trial, this deal was made because the defense knew that prosecutors had what was called 70 pages of disciplinary records from school and social media posts that showed, quote, an affinity for violence and weapons on the part of Carmelo Anthony. And they didn't think if that got in front of the jury, he would ever survive. And quite frankly, I had written that I think they were right.
Mm-hmm.
With this particular jury, they see that he was done. So I didn't think the deal was the worst thing in the world, but they had some miscalculations there. But at the end of the day, that's what they had. So what I wanted to talk about as well, because of your background, is number one, a kid like Carmelo, I had kind of bought this idea, and I'm not necessarily changed, but it turned my head a little bit, that he was this good kid. He worked a couple of jobs. He was captain of both the track and football team. I bought those as being true. No one came out and said they weren't. But then you turn around and hear about 70 pages of disciplinary records and stuff with him with weapons and an affinity for violence on social media. I wanted to see if you could provide some context for that.
What we are saying is the work that we are doing, the opportunities that we have now, that long ago others did not have in this way, is our opportunity to focus on changing systems, challenging systems.
Challenging, that's it.
Challenging systems, changing the lens of those that don't understand how it impacts all of us, not just some of us, and making a difference. That's why I talk about lens, language, and the law, not
Yes.
L3, the frameworks that I'm always, because if your lens is solely focused on hate and the narrative, and then the language is only the negative narrative, only one, you're only willing to hear what you want to hear, not listen, then you know nothing. And if you have no understanding of law, if you are only watching court TV, law and crime, these shows, and all of the media with your understanding of the law that a conviction is the end of anything, then you are not paying attention to anything.
That's
at
right.
all.
Sonny, the one part that was never accepted in this case by people who saw him as a monster was this idea that this was a 17-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And so was Austin Metcalf. I'm willing to give leave to both boys for whatever reasons that they got a conflict that day, that some of that is just being a teenager. Teenagers are obstinate. Teenagers are figuring out their masculinity. Teenagers can do a lot of dumb things. It's unfortunate that in this instance, there was a weapon involved. And again, we're not saying he shouldn't pay for that.
Right.
But had this not been weapons, maybe a couple people would maybe got a black eye or a broken leg or something, but it would have been just another fight amongst teens, which happened all the time. And apparently the Metcalfs had a proclivity for fighting.
They absolutely had a proclivity for fighting. And even the demeanor of the father, while he was saying this is
That
not
tells you
about,
everything you need to know.
look, when he said initially, oh, this is not about race, and then everything that he said after,
It was about race.
it was all about race. It's all
This
about
isn't
race.
about race. Oh, that
It was-
watermelon head should rot in jail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the language and the language that people use now, the memes that they create, the thing. Oh, and I even looked at your thread and saw somebody say, "It's over. It's over." You know, people want to like cut us off from. And I'm like, I have had.
I had a whole support group when I left Court TV, my old viewers, and literally this minute I mentioned race, they ran like cockroaches. It was unbelievable. They just had no
I've gotten it
interest.
too.
Because I'm a racist, because I mentioned that race might have played a role.
And see, The thing is, people don't want to talk about it because they say,
Yeah.
we're playing the race card. Actually, you can't play a card that you ain't never been dealt.
And
Because
like I
you've
always
never.
said, it was the prosecutor who played the race card in this case by getting rid of those 3 Black teachers who were perfectly able to sit in judgment
Yeah.
of this case, regardless of the fact that they were school teachers in the Collin County school system.
And I was picking up when you would see the protesters outside, and I was looking at the threads of individuals who were saying, and look at that, they better not think they're gonna burn down anything here. And I was like, well, that's really interesting, because they think of peaceful protests and Black Lives Matter. Oh, and somebody says that, well, and about Black Lives Matter. Actually, I don't. I'm not affiliated with Black Lives Matter. I don't even, I have never been affiliated with Black. I am Sonny Slaughter. I am who I am. I know people that say that, and I always ask, well, who is it? And what do you know about Black Lives Matter? What do you know about Antifa?
No.
You know,
What do you know about black on black crime?